Welcome to the awe-inspiring world of the deep blue oceans, the fascinating, beautiful world around us where 80% of our planet is covered in water, and the diversity of species which inhabit our oceans. So many different types, so many different ways of surviving and thriving in our world. And welcome to the world of pilotfish, because today I'd like to talk to you about a new species of business, which you could be. A species which travels into the deep blue oceans, which looks further ahead across the seas, across the nations, and across your categories, to say, how can I grow in a different way? I'd like today to give you confidence to grow like you had never done before, to grow in more creative ways, which doesn't mean spending lots of money, which doesn't take a lot of time, and doesn't mean you have to be a big company either. This is a strategy by which small companies and small countries can succeed in a big and turbulent and exciting world. But when we look at growth, we tend to think about becoming bigger. We tend to think about how many extra markets we can get into. We tend to think about how many more customers we can get, how many more products we can make. We try to diversify our range. We try to diversify our markets. We start in our home market, and then we say, how can we go to the next step? Well, I think they are often the wrong strategies. It's not about how can you do more things. It's not about how can you be big. It's not about how can you create a bigger, more diverse business. It actually might be counterintuitive. So many companies, when they grow, they find that is the point when they start to fail. That is the point where they overstretch all those good things which they've done in the past. When they start to say, how can I sell the products which were so successful here in Estonia, and how can I make them successful in Germany or Poland or Ukraine? I'm not sure that's always the right strategy. I'd like to offer you a different view of the world. Because when you enter those different markets, you don't have the resources which the people in those markets already do. You don't have the established brands which already exist in those markets. You don't have all the extra people to start building the brands, to distribute your products and services. And the costs of establishing yourself in those new markets can be huge and can often lead to failure not in the new markets, but also at home as well. So the question is, how can you grow in this turbulent world? How can you grow in a way which doesn't have the risks, which doesn't end in failure, which doesn't end in you becoming a fish in the net of a big, deep ocean? So how can you overcome as a small business, with the limited resources you have, trying to succeed in your existing markets and trying to develop new markets? How can you succeed against these great, enormous, powerful, wealthy sharks? Well, by thinking in a different way. And if we look at some of these markets around us, we see even more sharks trying to eat each other. But that's not the game you should be playing. Trying to compete against the sharks as a small business is perhaps not a strategy for success. If you look at how some other companies have done it, well, for example, the airline industry, who have struggled for the last decade in terms of changing economic patterns, the challenge of new business models, the changing profile demographically of who and when people fly. Well, they've formed alliances. You can see, for example, the Star Alliance, in terms of coming together, many of the airlines, some of them even closer, like United and Continental this week. So alliances are one way in which you can work with other partners in other markets to achieve the things you're trying to do, maybe to do the same things as you do in your local market in other places, high growth places. You can see that there are higher and lower risk ways of doing it, but there's also higher impact and lower impact ways of doing things. So if we take licensing, for example, or franchising, if you have a retail format, then that can be a low to medium risk way of reaching out to new markets. And you might say, well, what do I have to license or franchise across the world? Well, some markets like Stender's soap factory, for example, from Latvia, are able to reach out and have something slightly different to offer. Or you might say, how can I partner with somebody else to help them enter my local market whilst they help you enter their market? So it's a bilateral agreement, if you like, in terms of distribution, so helping other people. And it might be different ways. It might be some formal relationship, such as a joint venture, setting up a separate company, or even acquiring a company or being acquired, which is high risk, but can have more impact. But I'd like to focus on where there's lower risk and more speed, where you can make things happen in this turbulent, scary world, but you can make things happen faster by thinking a little bit smarter. And then you can make it happen with much more impact in the top right-hand box.